Okay. Hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins here on the official LOTRO stream channel. Last time on Plugging Along, we started modifying the Minstrel Buffs plugin to try to also track Soliloquy of Spirit buffs on party members. Today we're going to try to make it work for ourselves to start with, and then if we have time and it's working, we'll start seeing if we can add in party members as well. So, as always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. But for now, let's go ahead and review what I'm talking about. So, welcome to just above the Prancing Pony in Breetown, and my level 50 Minstrel on Treebeard. So, Minstrels, when they are in the Protector of Song stance, have a heal over time called Soliloquy of Spirit, and it's even castable on other people if you're in the Resonance stance. So Soliloquy of Spirit. Your tune is like a slow-burning soliloquy that keeps that spirit bolstered for a time. This is one of the few minstrel morale heals that can be used on the move, which is delightful. And also, it can stack up to 3 times. So for instance, if I cast it on myself, each one of these is going to last for 45 seconds from the time of casting. And when a Soliloquy Spirit is put on you, if you don't already have it, you get Inner Strength Tier 1, and then for each one that you get, it gets bumped up to Tier 2, and then Tier 3, capping out at 3% physical mitigation, 3% tactical mitigation. And each one of those Soliloquy of Spirits themselves is healing every 3 seconds. So with 3 of them on, it's healing on average once a second, which is great. So, because they last 45 seconds, I have trouble when I'm running around healing my fellowship, remembering which of my fellowship members has 3 of them on, because that seems like a neat thing to do. Just get those passive heals in there. And especially how long it's been since the last time I did it, because if 30 seconds goes by, your inner strength buff runs out, even if some of the Soliloquy of Spirits are still there. And if you have to start over from scratch, the next time you cast it, it starts over at Tier 1, even though I've got 2 of those Soliloquy Spirits on me. So, that's what's going on. I want to have a heads-up display that tells me how many Soliloquy Spirits my party members have, and what level inner strength they have, so that I can keep that topped up, and a timer to show me when that inner strength is going to wear off, so I can just pop a single Soliloquy of Spirit to keep that inner strength at Tier 3, so even if they're not getting the heals, they're getting the mitigations. Now, I did some searching, and I didn't see any other plugins that exist that claim to do this. So it's entirely possible something's out there that would do this, I just don't know about it. So if you know of such a thing, feel free to chime into chat. I don't have to recreate the plugin here. But since I was not able to find one, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a try, see what I can do myself. Cool. So that's our goal. As Soliloquy of Spirit and Inner Strength, and not that screen. Let's go ahead and open up our plugin manager. And in here we can see we have a Minstrel buff here. This is the one that we were working on last week. So if I load it up, we get that big blue box that is probably not how it's going to look in the final. And that box was just a way for us to demonstrate that we could detect Soliloquy of Spirits happening and pop them onto the screen if we needed to. So last time we talked about 2 different ways to tell that this was happening. We could either just monitor combat chat, and that reminds me, I can go ahead and create a couple of chats over here. So I'm going to change the filters on this to be standard and error, and rename it to be standard. Well, really just plugins, because that's really all you can do with a plugin. You can intentionally spit things out to standard, and you can have an error happen and cause things to go to the error channel. In general, you don't want to take advantage of the error channel, because if your plugin encounters something that goes to the error channel, LOTRO will kill that function of your plugin, and you'll stop processing things. All right, we'll rename this combat. So we can go ahead and change the filters for combat enemy, combat player, and death, aka combat event. And here we can see if we go ahead and do Soliloquy of Spirit, that pops out into the combat. And so we can see when it is cast and on whom it is cast. And ideally we'll be able to see that even in a raid situation, even a situation when they're not even in our fellowship or our party at all. Neat, and we can see those heals coming in. I'm not so worried about the heals part of it, just the presence of the buff for this. Okay, so that's where we're at. We can detect that this is happening in two different ways. We can draw something on the screen when it happens. Neat. Now we put together, there we go. We put together a sort of a proposed view of what the new UI might look like. And really just very simple. The name of the person and how many Soliloquy of Spirits and how much time is left on each of them, and how many inner strengths and what tier. What tier of the inner strength and how long that buff has before it fully expires. And on the right there, we can see a couple of possible UIs, user interfaces, ways of representing this. So we could just stack the symbol, which is kind of what we're doing here in in the test UI here. I don't like that because it's, I have to stare at it for more time than I want to see how many are there. Maybe little dots below the image. That's not bad, but I worry about seeing that and confusing it for how much time is left. Or the same 3 dots on top of the image, 1, 2, or 3 dots. And that way the timer is always below and the stack count is above. Or maybe something similar, but they're on the right side or the left side. As long as it's not in the same space as the timer, I think that'll be fine. So that's the goal right now, is create a row that can do that, at least for my character. Okay. With that being said, let's go ahead and fire up our text editor of choice. I'm going to be using Sublime Text. But as long as you're used to it, your choice is your choice. Okay, so we have a bunch of sample code fragments of ideas in here. We do not necessarily need to keep all of it, but at the top we have the to-do notes, our thoughts at the end of last stream. So to do, each row can use the effects list, effect added, effect removed, effect cleared for its player. We should be able to track soliloquies from whichever player is attached to that row. Each row should display 0, 1, 2, or 3 Soliloquy of Spirits, and 0 or 1 inner strengths of rank 1, 2, or 3. And we definitely want to make sure we localize the chat text or effects names so that French or German or even Russian players can use this, and it just works. Awesome. We have that icon for Soliloquy of Spirit. What we don't have is the icon number for inner strength. That'll be worth getting at some point. And in fact, I'll make a little note here. Inner strength icon equals question mark. And we'll go ahead and grab that inner ID so that we can just say, LOTRO, use this thing that you already know about. We don't have to provide our own image. Okay, we have a helper function here. Let's go ahead and just fix that up, move that out of here. We don't need that here anymore. So, do we see something like helper function, general functions? No. So that's great. We're going to go ahead and just add general functions. Oops, and that should definitely have a .lua on the end here. So, remember, if you add another file, you do need to go ahead and import it somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and import minstrel buffs, minstrel buff window, general functions. Excellent. And in here, we can go ahead and move our ability to strip text. Now, it may be that we won't end up using this if we're not doing chat at all, but because the combat chat applies colors to certain keywords, it can get in the way of us detecting that something has happened, because there's angle brackets, RGB equals, etc. We don't care about that, and we don't want to be dependent on what those colors are. Game Time says you can't change the icon background color depending on how many are applied. I'm not sure if that's meant to be a question, can't you do this, or a statement, but either way, I am hesitant to use color to represent, to solely represent the count, because a good sizable percentage of the population has some degree of color blindness. From a simple red-green colorblind to all the way up to the more rarer types. And so if you're only using color to differentiate, which is kind of what they've done here in the first place, right? You have the green version and the blue version. Well, for now, we'll just go along with that. And so the green one is the Soliloquy of Spirit. The blue one is the Inner Strength, which the Inner Strength bonus is only if you have spec'd out the Inner Strength trait in the, the Watcher of Resolve. I've called it the Protector of Song earlier. I don't know what I was thinking. Under Watcher of Resolve, if you have spec'd into Inner Strength, then that can proc. That can happen when you, with a 100% chance, when you do Soliloquy of Spirit. And so they're already using the green and the blue. So that ship has sailed. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing that. The greens are going to be the Inner Strength. The blue is going to be the greens are going to be Soliloquy of Spirit. Blues are Inner Strength. So I could see maybe also having these dots be different colors, like stoplights or something. But at the very least, I want a visual difference that is not color-based to represent the tier. That's okay. Don't worry about typos. I make them all the time. The point of words is to get people to understand what you're talking about. As long as we got that bridge crossed, we're good. I'll let you type if you're going to type some more, while I go back to fixing this file so it's a little less scattered from all the things we were trying last time. Okay, we have a function to initiate the chat logger. I think we're going to start with not trying to do chat logging, but just using the effect list. There's trade-offs to both of them. With the effect list, if we're going to inspect that list every time it changes, well, that changes a lot. It can change multiple times a second. To be told every time something changed, something changed, something changed, and then we have to go through and figure out which ones are there, that's kind of a pain. But the chat logging, to have to look at every combat message, that is also a pain. So there's no really efficient way to do this. Okay, Game Time says it's all good. Sweet. So yeah, and I have to emphasize, this is a very rough sketch of something that will get the job done. This is not necessarily its final form, right? We could definitely evolve it from here. But if I can get the combination of the left side of the Affidal row and the right side of the Dwemer row, then if that is working, then I am a happy plugin developer. We can make it even prettier later, right? So this is just a starting point. Okay, so the chat logger. The chat logger, I think, we're going to go ahead and not worry about that for right now. I'm not going to get rid of the code. I'm going to just pop it off here into a different unnamed file. And it's there if we need it. But for now, we'll think about the other stuff, the effect list. Okay, we have a function called create soliloquy window. We have add soliloquy, and then we had a bunch of other stuff. So again, we had a helper function called dump just to write stuff out. I'm going to go ahead and save that off. That's excellent. And then we had some other stuff. So let's bring that back into view and see how much of it we want to salvage from what we were playing around with last time. In fact, this is all still in there. So if I were to unload, oh, no, I see what it is. I'm not in a party, so none of this is going to run. That's fine. I might be able to be in a party. Let's see, do I have anyone? Yeah, fellowship. Let's invite Farna over into my fellowship. Neat. Okay, so I'm in a fellowship. I'm going to go ahead and put a Soliloquy of Spirit on and a load. And that should, well, it should do great things, but it has errored out. So let's go ahead and figure out what we just did. Okay, so general functions, line 2. Okay, I did not make sure that turbine.ui is included at, before general functions. So let's go ahead and import turbine.ui. Now, I could do that here. I could do it in general functions, but I kind of prefer to do it here, I think. But no real harm to do it either way. Okay, so with no crashes this time, we go ahead and we see that the leader of the party is Affadil. It's me. And there's 2 people in the party, and we spit out the members of the party. This was really testing what can we do with the party interface. Oh, even the Soliloquy of Spirit icon. Well, that sounds great. Let's do that. So I'm going to close the main here and the general functions, and then we can see if effect get name is Soliloquy of Spirit, then go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and add in an else if effect get name equals inner strength. Then we're going to go ahead and do a turbine.shell.writeLine. And we're going to go ahead and use the effect get icon to get the number of the icon, the inner value of it. So go ahead and remember to rename that inner strength icon and effect get icon. Sweet. Okay. So if we go ahead and make sure we have it on here and then load the plugin. Now this is very much a debug code, so it's only running the once when we load the plugin. That's by design and totally fine for our purposes. You know what, Minstrel Buffs? You are just on top of chat, aren't you? Okay, so we can see the Soliloquy of Spirit icon. I don't see inner strength. Maybe I misspelled it. Oh, I did misspell it because it's inner strength tier 1. Fantastic. So that's a thing to think about is so that's inner strength. What do we do? Hyphen tier 1. But it's also tier 2 and tier 3. So for now, I will just say inner strength. So right here, I would just like to say starts with, I think, or actually, see, this is where I need to be better at Lua pattern matching, is what I really want to do. But we actually used Lua pattern matching in this chat logger. And this is my go-to method when I think something is possible, but I don't remember how to do it. Go look at code that works that does it. Another plugin, your own other plugin, someone else's other plugin. And in this case, we have a message, and we're doing string.match. Great. So we're going to go ahead and say the inner strength pattern equals tier, and then this. What's a pattern matching in Lua for a number? You know, I don't know. Lua pattern matching. Let's find out. So Lua.org has lots of stuff. We can see that digits are represented by %d. So if I come in here and do tier %d, then that's going to match a number. In this case, 1, 2, or 3. Perfect. Now this might have to be more complicated for German or French or Russian, but we're going to start with making it work for English and cross that linguistic bridge when we come to it. Okay, so now we have that. What do we do with it? String.match. Okay. Actually, you know what would be useful is to know what that tier is. And we can do that with what's called a capture group. So if you surround part of your pattern matching pattern with parentheses, that tells Lua to to save off the value that it finds in there, if it finds one. And then we can use that to know what tier we're on, 1, 2, or 3. That's going to be really useful because that's one of the main things I want, is to know that all of my party members are getting that 3% physical and tactical mitigation, which is going to be very important when we're running Thorog here on Treebeard. At least I hope it's important. Okay, so we have the inner strength pattern. So, else if, what do we do? String.match is going to return a thing. So let's go ahead and have an else in here, and we'll do local tier equals string.match. And what is the syntax? The first thing we pass in is the thing that we are searching. So effect get name. And the second thing is the pattern. So inner strength pattern. And the result is either going to be nil or the thing that was in those parentheses. And if you are matching multiple things, then you'll get a tuple returned as the result. We're only matching one thing, super easy. So if tier is not equal to nil, we found something. And so that replaces this, and inner strength, and we can even show off here that tier icon equals that. All right, so there may be a typo or two in here, but let's give it a try. Let's run that, unload, reload. Awesome. I didn't have anything on, so that's going to be a very short trip. All right, let's go ahead and load. Okay, that didn't work. Let's figure out what we did wrong. So if tier is not equals to nil, well, let's add some debug code. Turbine.shell.writeLine checking effect get name against inner strength pattern. Let's just write it out for everything we're checking, because you never know. Okay, so we found, checking inner strength tier 1 against inner strength tier something. Well, my goodness, I feel like that should have worked. So perhaps something went wrong. Now, the easiest thing to do for this is to relax our constraint here. I don't actually care that those are digits. I just want there to be something in there. So let's go ahead and instead of saying, I think it's digits, just say whatever. Give me all of it. Okay, let's go ahead and get that back on. Reload. Inner strength, checking inner strength. Still not coming back. Fascinating. Let me make sure that I've got the text correct. First of all, well, I'm going to have to actually hit the copy key. There we go. Okay, let's double check, make sure that wasn't a fix. Shouldn't have been. And then, all right, checking Snowball. Why do I have Snowball? Snowball tier 7. I don't even know what that is. That's fun. Okay, so reduce induction times against inner strength. Checking inner strength tier 1 against inner strength. So we're still not seeing that. Is there something else that we're missing? Inner strength pattern is looking correct. The effect get name is looking correct. And then in here, turbine.shell.writeLine, that's looking correct. But just to be sure, turbine.shell.writeLine, no match. And that tells us that we're definitely going to the wrong place. And that's fine. Strength against inner strength. That is fascinating to me. There are online tools where you can check pattern matching. So Lua Pattern Matching Online Test. Let's see. Lua Pattern Viewer. That sounds great. Okay. So if I come in here and I take my pattern, in fact, let's put the %d back in. And I say, this is my pattern. Okay. And oh, I bet yes. Okay, so I didn't even think about all the special characters that can go into a pattern view, matching. So the hyphen here is a modifier, and we need to probably escape it. Excellent. So %hyphen means literal hyphen. We escape the special meaning that hyphen would normally have. So we can come back here and say, aha, of course, that was supposed to be escaped. And this is where a pattern, the Lua Pattern Viewer is so amazing. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and save that off because I have to kind of rediscover it each time, and that's no good. So we're going to add that to, I don't know, where am I? Oh, that's funny. I may have already had it. Or maybe I just added it. Excellent. Either way, it's there. So let's give that a try. Let's not pat ourselves on the back too fast. But I feel pretty good that that was definitely a problem. Okay, so inner strength, tier 1 icon. Oh, fantastic. So we can go ahead and grab that and store it off. So we know in integer form what it is. But as a convention, it's very nice to store those in hexadecimal base 16 format. Now, you don't have to do the conversion manually, of course. You can make use of the built-in calculator. This is the Windows version. If we come to programming, paste that value in, we can see the hex value is right here. And to type it as a hex value in Lua, just proceed it with a 0x. Of course, I have to actually copy the thing. Very good. Now, something we noticed last time on Plugging Along is that images tend to start with 4.1. And so that tells us we probably have an image ID. So that's a good test. That's another reason to convert them into hex instead of just decimal, is it allows you to do that site check, because images tend to start with 4.1. This starts with 4.1. It's probably an image. Neat. Oh, I'm being advised that I may have butchered the pronunciation of Dewemer. Well, cool. Thank you for checking me on that. Let me know how close that one was. Okay. So we have an icon. What we don't have is confirmation that it's actually the same inner icon for each tier. It looks like it's the same. But we can do some rapid fire checking here. Now, first of all, we're going to get rid of the no match, now that it actually is matching at least once, and the checking text. And that's going to really clean up a lot of this output that we're getting. So we'll go ahead and get inner strength tier 2 and load. And here we can see the icon is that value. I'm going to save it off just to double check. And we'll go ahead and get tier 3, unload, reload, and the tier 3 icon also. So if we go back to our calculator, we can see the original value was here. And we can confirm that LOTRO currently is definitely using just the same icon for tiers 1, 2, and 3. Very handy for us. We only have to worry about one of them. So I'll go ahead and save off that that's the number, but I want it stored in hex for easy viewing. Okay, so we want to go ahead and, while I'm thinking about it, document the name of the ability here. Excellent. And at the same time, we can go ahead and do a Soliloquy of Spirit pattern. Now, that's going to be a really simple pattern. It's just whoops. It's just the name of the ability. There's no customization. But we'll go ahead and save it off here. Oh, thanks, Woobot. Yes, we are approaching the end of the month. So if the Get Ready code hasn't already gotten out there, do remember to use the special code to unlock all sorts of cool stuff, because SSG is really very nice to its community. Except for not giving me task carry-alls on Treebeard. Oh my goodness. Fingers crossed for the sales tomorrow. I have so many task items. Okay, so this is coming together. We have an icon. We weren't even meaning to do that right away, but we got it. And we're going to go ahead and cut out I think we're going to just stop outputting that information here for right now. And what else is still left in our debug output? Leader, count, party member, awesome. So a thing to think about is that party is nil if you are not in a party. So the first thing we want to do is the player is always going to be present. The party might not be present. And so there is probably a function that we can say, please let us know when a member is added to or removed from the fellowship, or from the party, I should say. And we could use that because if someone is added to the party, then by definition, party should be a valid value. And if someone is removed from the party, then we might be just down to the player. But for right now, we actually only are worried about the player. And so I am thinking that in the Create Soliloquy window, what we talked about last time was I would like each one of these green bordered areas to be its own row in control of, okay, this is the player name, this is what's happening with the player, and it just draws itself. And if we get really fancy, maybe we could support dragging to reorder these things so that you can make it match the order of the fellowship. That'd be cool. People are saying fun things in chat. Okay. So that's the idea, is I just want to make this first green bordered row that says Affidil. That's me. And if I can do that, then I think we can extend it to multiple fellowship members. And then I will be a slightly better healer on our legendary runs on Saturday, because I'll actually know who has these buffs. At least that's the end goal. That's the hope. So we need a row. And that's going to be a control. We're just going to have a function that creates a control, and we can stick that into the window. Now, there's two ways to do that. You can just have a control sitting around. We can also make our own class, and that's probably what we should do. For instance, the timer control in the Minstrel buffs is a class based off of turbine.ui.control. Awesome. The buff window is a class based off of turbine.ui.window. So this is telling us that if we want to be writing code that is consistent, then we want to also do this. We want to follow this pattern. Okay, well, let's go ahead and maybe make a second file to keep all this in. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and open up the main file so I can remember to import it. And it'll have to be before Soliloquy Tracker window because that's where I'm going to use it. And we're going to go ahead and call it Soliloquy Tracker row. How about? Naming things is hard, so I just try to go for the most obvious things so that when I look at it in 6 months, I can be like, okay, I think I know what I was going for here. So in here, we're going to go ahead and import Minstrel buffs. Minstrel buffs window, that's the folder, the structure here. In fact, we can see that if we hover over, we can see it's plugin/minstrelbuff/minstrelbuff window. Now, that's not my favorite way. I like to see the author name and then the plugin name for consistency instead of the plugin name and then more plugin name. But it is how it currently is. So we're just going to keep on doing that. And then Soliloquy Tracker row. And there we go. We've imported this file. And because I get nervous about this sort of thing and I don't want to beat my head against the desk later trying to find a bug for a file that's not even being included, we'll just say loaded. All right, cool. We can see the text loaded, so we're good. We've loaded the right file, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. Awesome. So what does this look like? Now, I have trouble remembering how Lua does classes. So I often will just go to an existing one and check it out. Oh, here's an import for turbine.ui. Cool. Okay. So we are going to name our new class, and we're going to call it, I'm going to type this 7 times, tracker row equals a class based on turbine.ui.control, a box that we can draw stuff in. Neat. And we want to go ahead and have a constructor. All right. Now, we preface it with the name of the class, and then colon, and then constructor. And then we make sure we call the base class's constructor, so control.constructor with the self. Neat. Now, right now, it sets its background color to full-on white. That's because the timer control is that white bar that scrolls across. Well, Little Redhead says, I hope you're just going to copy paste Soliloquy. So yeah, if you're using a more advanced text editor than just the notepad that comes with Windows, then chances are really good it has an autocomplete functionality. So for instance here, if I type SOL, then it auto prompts, did you mean Soliloquy Tracker row? And the answer is, I probably did. And so now that it is typed once, I don't have to worry about it so much. I can copy paste or I can use autocomplete. Okay, so back color, I'm going to go ahead and set a back color of 0 right now. And there are 4 parameters here. One of them is probably a transparency, but I don't remember which. And when I don't remember which, I'm going to go ahead and come into the API documentation. And that is a turbine.ui.control. And we're going to come into the methods and search for set back color. Awesome. It's going to take a color. Okay, I should have guessed that. And then color methods. Let's see. It does not tell me what order that comes in. One would think the alpha channel would have to be last, right? One would think. Let's go check the documentation on LOTRO interface just for completeness and see if it will reveal the secrets here. So color, awesome. Thank you so much. So this is why I keep a link to the LOTRO interface documentation. I feel like it complements very nicely the downloadable zip file as well. So we can see there are 3 constructors. You can initialize an empty color, probably black. You can initialize just from RGB, or you can also, oh, it's first. Okay. You can also pass alpha. Neat. Well, I'm not ready to deal with an alpha channel yet, but it is nice to know it's there. I just want a black background. So RGB 0, and don't worry about it. Okay. There's also a timer width. Now, I'm not ready to deal with a timer width yet, but I do want to have some sort of a size. Now, we know that we want to be, let's see, be wide enough for 3 Soliloquy of Spirits, and here I am just going to go ahead and do some copy paste. So be wide enough for 3 of those and 1 inner strength. And was there anything else? Is that big enough? Does there need to be a gap between each one? Probably. Maybe just a couple of pixels. So 3 Soliloquy of Spirits and 1 Inner Strength with, X pixels. Whoops. Let's go ahead and make a new line. With X pixels between each icon and Y pixels border to left and right. So we're going to propose some space to the left, some space to the right, and then some space between them. Could be the same, could be different, for even spacing. So we can spell that out with variables. Left, right border equals, we're going to call that 4 pixels. Well, I could say it's in pixels, or I could just call the name of the variable pixels. And then we have margin between icon pixels equals, I'm going to say 3 pixels and see what that looks like. Because I'm naming these as variables, we can tweak those later, not worry about it. And then local icons width equals 32, I do believe. And now we can just calculate. Okay, local control width equals, we need 2 of the left-right borders, so times 2, plus we need the icon width times 4, plus we need the margin between the icons times 3, and scene, right? That's all we need there. And then we do need local height, right? So top, bottom, border pixels equals, we'll call it 4. And then, let's see, local, something I don't really have a sense of is how many pixels we need for the name. So name height equals, I want to just say it's 20 pixels. We can actually check later how much space the label is taking, but for now we'll just call it that. And local name icon margin equals, we'll call it 3 pixels, why not? And now we know how tall this is. Or at least we will if we go ahead and say local icon height equals 32. Because we need however much space is at the top and the bottom, the height of the words, the space between the words and the icons, and the height of the icons. Now, a thing that's not accounted for here is the little dots for the strength of the inner strength. And we can fudge on that and say, okay, that's just part of that margin, or we can take it into account. Local inner strength tier space equals, we'll call that like 5 pixels, I don't know. The whole point of naming them is we can change them later, super easy. So local control height, and you know what, I'm gonna bring this up and just, drag that over there for reference, really? Come on. Okay, so we've got that for reference. So the control height equals the top, bottom border pixels times 2, plus name height, plus name icon margin, plus icon height, name height margin, plus inner strength tier space, plus icon height. So that's all the space we need vertically for this control. And then we can just set size. Neat. So we've got control width and control height. Now, there's also some leftover code from the timer here is paused and right to left. We don't have to worry about that. We're just going to delete it. So be tall enough for the name, the inner strength tier, dots, and the icons. Cool. So that's a lot of effort, it feels like. Like we could just have a number. We're 20 pixels high. We're 30 pixels wide. And you'll see that sometimes, especially if I'm feeling lazy. It's just like, okay, here. But by spelling out all the parts we expect to affect the width and the height, it makes it very easy for us to make tweaks later on. So even though it took a few extra minutes to set that up now, later on, if I feel like, oh, there's not enough space between these icons, it's a change in one place and it just works. Now, a consequence of all of this is that this is all the same for every row, right? There's nothing user or player specific for a row. We're not basing the row width on the length of the name, for instance. If the name is too long, it's just too long. And so all of this essentially does boil down to a single number that is known by the time we hit runtime. And it doesn't have to be defined in this function. But this is the place where we're using it. So for right now, it's fine. And doing this little math a few dozen times is super easy for your computer. Just adding and multiplying numbers together is pretty straightforward. Okay, so all that said, we have a thing. We should try using a thing. So timer control, when we see that being used in buff window, I'm guessing, then we see it being declared like this. And that sounds great. Let's go ahead and give that a try ourselves in the Create Soliloquy window. We're going to go ahead and instead of the temp label, we're going to go ahead and say, let's make sure we use the right name, not a timer control, but a soliloquy tracker row. Row equals, and is that how they did it? Yep, something equals that. Neat. I'm going to put a semicolon there because I come from a semicolon world. And remember that the first thing you do with a UI element is you parent it. And we can see the same thing happening here. So row set parent, and we're going to set it to the soliloquy window. And anything else? Position, I'm fine with the default position. Set visible, I want it to be visible. Timer size, we're not doing that at the moment. Cool, okay, so maybe that's all we need. Let's give it a try. Let's go ahead and unload and reload. Sweet, we can see the black area that we'd find as that control. Now that's probably not big enough for all of the things that we proposed, but that's okay because those numbers can be changed. But the first thing we can do is we can go ahead and get the player name. Well, how do we do that? Let's go ahead and close some of these down. Now, this constructor is currently taking nothing, but what if we were to pass it in the player whose row it is representing, and then the row can take care of everything. So if we were to do that, we can see, well, that's a good question. When we have a party, what kind of a class are we getting? Let's go back to the API documentation and look at the gameplay. So in party, we can see that get leader and get member are both methods. Get leader returns a player, get member returns a player. Excellent. So we want a player. Players can be either local player or party member, but in this case, the player itself has what we need. The player method of get effects is exactly what we need to track what's going on for the, us or someone else. So we know that we want to be passed a player. Now, I'm just naming it player. That doesn't guarantee it is a player. We could check for that, though. I don't remember how, but I know there's a way. So we can say Lua check object type. And let's see. Lua type check-in. Let's see if that's a possibility. I'm going to just scan through here. Looks like type X. Well, that's a neat idea. Let's go ahead and just turbine.shell.writeLine, and we'll do type of player. We're not going to use it yet. We're just going to look at what that is. And here, we're going to go ahead and use call for getting the local player, and we're going to use it. I have to be in the right place for it. We're going to go ahead and use that here and pass that player off. And that will give us some information about, can we use type here to kind of double check our assumptions. Okay. Neat. It's a table. Type is a table. That was not helpful. There may be a way to check the object type. And I suppose I could, is object specific class. Okay, I'm not seeing it. I don't know it off the top of my head. I'm going to just count on myself to not make that mistake, right? And if it does, we'll crash out really hard, and we'll try not to do that again. Okay, so we're passing player. Let's go ahead and make use of that. So we do know that we have a label that we want to use. Excuse me. So now that we've set the size, let's go ahead and local player name label equals turbine.ui.label. And remember that we do need to parent that. And we're just going to go ahead and set it to be self. And what else do we need? Well, setting a size would be great. So we can go ahead and say player name label set size. And we know that we can just use the whole width of the control, because in our prototype here, the whole horizontal space is available for the name. We're not using anything to the right of it. So that's super easy. And we know that the name height is already predefined. Maybe not correctly, but it's defined as something. And player name label, we can set the text to be player something. I don't know. There's probably a way to get the name of the player. If we look at the API documentation for player, we can see get name. That sounds like a promising function. Let's do it. Get name. Okay, so if we go ahead and try that out, so unload, load, great, we've got a name. It's, I would say, not the best size font for what I'm looking for, but that's okay. It's a starting point. Like I said, this is just to proof of concept. We can make it look better later. Okay, so we have a player. In fact, we should probably store this player off, right? So we can do self.player equals player, and that means we can reference it later if we need to. In the meantime, I am having a feeling that we're going to need the reference for player here a couple of times. So I might go ahead and, I wish I could pin that there on this scene. Let's go ahead and API documentation. There we go. And Sublime text. Great. Okay, so can we make it a little bit narrower? Yes, we can. Great. Okay, so in the middle there, that's where the plugin is going to be, and we can see the documentation and the actual code that we're writing on. So then we won't be flipping back and forth between game and other windows quite so much. But I didn't keep my proposed design visible. I wonder if I can add that real fast. Let's add a window capture, and we're going to call it UI prototype. Yes, I want it to be visible. Well, that was disappointing. Photos. I guess Windows Photos really doesn't want to have its window captured. All right. Well, I will just discard that and remove. Okay. So we have a player. There is a event that we can register for oh, you know what I'm thinking or missing is the get effects. Get effects returns an effect list. And the effect list has methods, effects added, effects removed, and effects cleared. Now, the Minstrel Buffs plugin already uses this, and sometimes I want to just go back and look and see how it's doing things. So, it'd be helpful if I opened the correct window. So the effect list of the local player, we can see that they go ahead and use add callback for effects added, removed, and cleared, but they're using the same function each time. They just call this function when something changes. We'll read through all of them and figure out what it was. I think one could be a little bit more cautious about that if one wanted to, but I think it's a fine starting point. If you simply keep track of when things were added and removed, then you could skip having to scan the whole time. But in general, you probably have less than 20 or 30 effects. We're doing string comparisons on each of them to find the ones we care about, and only then are we doing stuff. Yeah, maybe that's fine, right? Okay, so let's start with that. So we have a player, and we can add a callback to the, we need the effect list. So local effect list equals player, and what was the name of that? That was get effects. Excellent. I was going to go with the get effect list, and that did not sound correct. So get effects, and then with effect list, I'll do it with a lowercase e. Then we want to go ahead and add a callback function. Now we do need to define that function. So we need to prefix it with Soliloquy tracker row, effect change callback, and then what does that look like? Well, let's go take a look at here. All right, they call it functions under args, and then they just immediately do something else. I'm going to go ahead and define it instead of doing an inline one like that. So look with tracker row. We know that that is going to take a sender and an args. And that's how we could kind of, I think, tell the effect that is being added or removed. Okay, so turbine.shell.writeLine and effects changed for self.player get name. So that's just a simple little debug to see, is this working? Okay, so if we unload and reload, no crashes so far, that's always promising. All right, there's our error. Excellent. So we can see attempt to index player field player, which is nil. Let me just double check something. I don't think that's the correct thing to do. No, that's not the correct thing to do. Okay, so chances are the callback functionality here is not expecting to call this in the manner that populates self. That is my guess. Oh, well, self was something though. Did I forget to set self.player? No, I set it right there. Okay. So second attempt is to just go ahead and mimic what they've done here. So that is something that we can do here. We will go ahead and in the constructor here, before we actually do this, we'll go ahead and say self.effectChange callback equals a function that calls this. But now this should change. Refresh effects. So let's give that a call. We now have a member variable called effect_change callback that is going to call correctly the member function, which maybe that'll work. Let's give that a try. Great. So we can see effects change for affidavit got called 4 times from that one thing. And that's where I get concerned about doing just all of them blanket instead of adds and removes and clears. But like I said, this is just, the attempt is to get something working, and then we can come back and optimize it later. And then maybe take those optimization techniques into the main code of Minstrel Buffs, which is using the same code to figure out if you have ballads and anthems, which we can, we would be able to see them, but they're underneath here. So we can see the ballads and anthems. It's using those same techniques to tell that they've gone away. So perhaps we could bring some optimization back into the main code if we find something good. Okay. We can see effects change is still coming in as this settles, as the effects on my character settle down. But we're in the right place. We're definitely getting called when effects are changing. Neat. So what does the main code do? Well, it does a couple things actually. It's very interesting. So refresh effect to display. It gets the count of effects and starts tracking things that it cares about. And so we can see that the first thing it does is it sorts the effects based off of the starting time. So this is how it maintains a consistent ordering, even though the effects that you get back are often not consistently ordered. So the anthems here are going to always be ordered in the order that you cast them, or that you performed them, because we're sorting that by the time, by the start time. So this started first, and then that started. So whenever effects change, that's a consistent ordering there. That doesn't sound like a bad thing. It seems like there should be a helper function for that, maybe. So let's take a look. Do we think that would be useful? Well, the effect count is useful to have multiple places. It's one of those things where how much effort is it to extract a function, put it into a central place, versus are we just talking about copy pasting 3 lines of code? Does that make sense? But I feel like getting a chronologically ordered effects list is maybe a common enough thing that we should go ahead and add that to our general functions. Function get effects ordered by start time. And we'll get an effects list. I think, let's go back and double check that's what we get, but I think that's right. Okay, so we get an effect list. Awesome. So the first thing we get, I've gone to the wrong place, is we're going to get an effect count, and we're going to get that from the effect list that was passed in. And then I think we need to get our own sorted effects table that we will be returning. In fact, we can go ahead and write that, return sorted effects. And then finally, we can go ahead and grab the sorting function. Well, let's see. So we're getting each one of them. Excellent. and we're putting them into sorted effects. And then we will sort the sorted effects based off of an anonymous function that just compares the starting time. Now, I'm going to go ahead and insert that into a new line so it's a little bit easier for me to read. I can see the function, the body of the function, and the end. Okay, so get start time, absolute comparison, sweet. Now, if I wanted to be very brave, I could go ahead and try to use this right here, get that. And then get rid of that code, just to see, because that'll be a very obvious way to find out if it's working. Okay, let's go ahead and use. We have our ballads, we have our anthems. Well, those certainly look like they're behaving in the same way. Awesome. So now we can make use over in our row. We can get the sorted effects using the exact same code, but much easier. Okay, so get ordered effects by start time. Thank you very much, Minstrel Buffs, for having that code that we can lift and borrow into other parts of Minstrel Buffs. What do we do with it? Well, what do? They have the sorted effects, and they basically go through each effect and check to see, is this something we care about? So in our case, we're checking to see, is this an Soliloquy of Spirit, or is it an inner strength tier 1, 2, or 3? Now, this is actually very similar. The ballads, we don't care about time, we just care that they exist. But for the anthems, we do care about how long they have left. We're going to end up caring about time for both of ours, but there's definitely some similarities here, where the ballads there can be 0, 1, 2, or 3 of them. So it looks like they are using a helper method to track where they are for ballad effect place. They start out saying you're in the first column, then you're in the second column, then you're in the third column. I think I'll do it slightly differently. Maybe. But we do have timers to care about. Excellent. But the effect will have the information we need for that. And then anthem, buff window show anthem, and the anthem effect place. So this code is tracking where we are in the indexing. Are we in the first slot, the second slot, the third slot? That's a fun way to do it. But we do want to iterate through the effects. And so we want that effect count. And in this, we do want to check for are things matching. So I'm going to grab this local effect equals sorted effects index of I, and then checking for things. So we already had some code that checked for things. That was down here in the bottom of our Soliloquy window file, but this is the general idea. If the effect name equals this. Okay. Now, in our case, we might want to take these definitions here and move them over to the row file, where they're really going to be used a lot. Ideally, the window won't care about that at all. And then the code that references it, we're looking at something like this. So that was a reason to have that test debug code still floating around, is we're still looking. Is the effect named Soliloquy of Spirit? Then do something. If it's not, then can we check to see if it's an inner strength? Now, do they do something similar? It was a valid ballad effect, is valid anthem effect. So they have some helper methods to check for that kind of thing. We could do something similar but I think we don't have a lot of variability here. There's so many anthems and ballads that they had to worry about for the main part of Minstrel Buffs. That doesn't seem like a thing to worry about here. So we'll start here. And then if that, then use this tier for inner strength. Add a Soliloquy of Spirit. Cool. So we're in the right place here. One of the things Minstrel Buff does is have these very pretty backgrounds with places for the icons that are very specifically placed. So they show up against a background. It makes it look like they're being held by this container. It's very lovely. Obviously, my UI is not in that place yet. But you could see where you could have a row like this with a predefined spot for your icons and your timers. So I may revisit that at some point. But for now, not so much. Not so much. Okay, so we would like when we're doing refresh effects, we basically want to start over from scratch because we're going to see everything. So thinking through, we need something to keep track of how many of these things we have. So self dot Soliloquy of Spirit count equals 0. Self dot inner strength tier equals 0. And we do want to keep track of the effects. So Soliloquy of Spirit effects equals, and in fact, if we're keeping track of the effects, do we really need a count, a separate count? We might not. We might not. We may just be able to use the length of the table as our count. Self dot inner strength effect. And you're going to have either 0 or 1 of them. So we're going to call it nil, and it will either be that or it'll be a valid effect. I'm not sure about the count yet. Oh, but we need to find the tier when we're parsing the name in the first place, or we will find the tier. So we might as well do that. That count, though. Maybe we'll use it in a Lua table indexing manner. Okay, so if we have a Soliloquy of Spirit, then we go ahead and say self.count. And unlike some other languages, there's no plus operator. You just have to say equals itself plus 1. And it's just a nice syntactic thing, but I do miss it. And then I have to remember how to add something to a table. Now in this case, we have an index. So we can say that with an index of the count equals effect. Okay, that's cool. And then tier. So we can say inner strength tier equals tier. And we could even say to number, just to coerce it from being a string to a number. And then we can say that we forgot self dot. That's very sad. And then self dot inner strength effect, we do want to say that effect off so that we know how much time is left for it. So, effect. Okay, well, we're collecting together these effects, and now we need to do something with them. I propose another function to handle that. So we're going to call that function Soliloquy of tracker row draw effects. So we have refreshed the effects, and at the end of it, we're going to go ahead and call self draw effects. And that way, ideally, maybe this wouldn't even be called here, but this is the callback function, so that's a restructuring problem for later. So at the end of getting the effects, we're going to go ahead and draw the effects. So we can do a for loop. And in fact, can I copy one? Yes, I can. Oh, we had one just up here. Okay, I'm going to bring that down a little bit. You know, minstrel buffs, you can live down here next to chat. There we go. We want a little bit more height here. Okay, so we can do for I equals 1 to the Soliloquy of Spirit count, and we're incrementing by 1. I think that's optional even, so I'm going to leave it off. Great. So we want to draw these, and each one we want to have its own timer, but we'll get to that. So we do know where we want each of these to be from the left. We calculated this all out before. So we have the left-right border, we have the margin between icons, and we have the icon width. And this is where I was saying, calculating this in here, maybe that hurts us. We might want to be able to use that somewhere else. So I'm going to bring that out. And in fact, it's not even going to be... All right, I'll keep it local. Nope, I won't. I'm going to keep on second guessing myself. And you know what? We're going to do the same with the height as well. I'm not sure we need it right now, but just in case. All right, and we're going to unlocalize those so that they're available during the callback function, because I feel like the lifetime is constrained at the file level. Okay, so we can use that information and go ahead and draw an effect. So we had some fake code to draw. Oh, we were just drawing the icon. Excellent. So let's go ahead and see what that would look like. So if we are drawing icons and we're going to parent them, we want to make sure to get rid of the old ones when we're done with them. So we do want to unparent each of the old ones and then remove them, any references that we have. We want to have a reference to them, I think. Now, there's already a solved solution for this in the main code, so we might be able to glance through and see that. So we have buff window show effect. Let's go look at buff window and see how it's tracking these things. Okay, it has a ballot effect displays. Excellent. Oh, it pre-creates them and then maybe just sets them visible or not. Oh, that's lovely. We should do that. Let's steal that code. Okay, so back in the constructor, we're going to go ahead and, oh, you know, that makes me feel like I was wrong to move all of those numbers around. We'll certainly see, but that makes me feel like that was wrong. Let's put it wherever that was. Because ideally we do just create these and position them once in the constructor and then just make them visible or not. That makes way more sense than trying to destroy them, recreate them. I don't know what I was thinking. I gotta tell you, doing this live is a challenge. Okay, so we are gonna go ahead and have self. Obviously, we're not gonna call it ballot effect display, but we could call it Soliloquy of Spirit effect display. Okay, well, they call it displays. That makes sense. Okay, so Soliloquy of Spirit effect displays. We're gonna make a new table, and then we're gonna go from 1 to 3, And the position, now, they are having a theme system in the Minstrel Buffs plugin, which is great. It lets you play around with how this is displayed. That's way beyond where we are right now. But you should know that if you are here, you can set to fixed anthems or no window, or smaller anthems or no anthems or single line. There's all sorts of different ways to display this stuff. Love it. It's got a weird delay when you switch themes, but whatever. So I use the standard one because I usually run in red or blue lines, and I can only get up to 3 anthems anyway. So that works great for me. But if you happen to really like seeing all the possible anthems, maybe you're running with different parties and or multiple minstrels, and you want to hit every anthem possible, that could be a thing. Okay. So theme is unnecessary. We're going to go ahead and say the position X is, in fact, I'm just going to say X. X is, and then we have to remember, it's the left-right border pixels plus the margin between icon pixels. So I minus 1 times the margin plus the icon width itself. Oh, but we don't have to include that in the X. Perfect. That's how far from the left we are. Great. And local Y doesn't change. So local Y equals, we know that's the top bottom border pixel plus the name height and plus the inner strength tier space. There we go. Perfect. So that tells us how far down we are and how far over we are. So the effect display is a LOTRO effect display. Awesome. And we're going to set the parent to self. And the position is just going to be X and Y. And we're going to set visible to false and set the size to, we're going to make use of the icon width and icon height here. Great. And I'm guessing the intent is that these can then just be, you can set the theme, set the effect. Get effect displays. Okay, where's that being used? Okay, so we're setting effect, setting visible, sweet, excellent. So we can go ahead and make use of that. Self, Soliloquy of Spirit effect displays, I, set effect. Excellent. We know that's in the Soliloquy of Spirit effects. And we know this line's getting super long, so we're going to go ahead and break it into 2 parts. And we want to go ahead and set self.soliloquy of spirit effects. Soliloquy of spirit effect displays. I set visible equals to true. Now, what's this not doing? This is not disabling the visibility of non-used ones. And that makes me a little concerned. Where is height effect being used? Because we do want to make use of that. So, if the ballad effect place is less than 3, neat. In fact, that initial check doesn't seem very necessary, does it? So, for I equals that to 3, count plus 1 to 3, then go ahead and Well, what do they do when they hide? They just set the visibility to false. That sounds great. Let's do that. Okay. Now, that's a lot of coding without any testing. Let's go ahead and see what that does. So we want to go ahead and reopen our plugin manager, which is hiding anyway, and go ahead and unload and reload. Okay, no crashes so far. That's very promising. But everything we've been writing has been in a callback function. So let's take a look at... Oh my goodness. Okay, so we have an effect, and because we're using the actual effect display, the... sorry, I've already forgotten the name of it. The LOTRO effect display. Because we're using that, it's showing live how many seconds are left on that one. Now, we want to set up our own timer that creeps down along with it, but that's pretty cool. Okay, slight problem. I have done my code incorrectly, but that's okay. That's awesome. So we can come on in, and the X position here needs to be adjusted over by the icon width as well. So the left, right border pixels, plus we have how much margin between them, plus the icon width itself. So if we go ahead and unload and reload, then we can see, awesome, they are spaced out just like we were hoping. I'm gonna go ahead and summon another one because it's just so cool. Awesome. All right, I actually feel like those are spaced a little bit too far apart. So while I'm in here, we're gonna say margin between pixels, we're gonna knock it down to 2. And we can also think about that inner strength. So draw effects, we're already showing and hiding the effects that we need. And then we need the inner strength effect. Okay, well, we should probably create it in the constructor. So self.innerStrength effect displays. We can go ahead and do display equals, well, that's just going to be the one, isn't there? Turbine.ui.lotro.effect display. Awesome. And same thing, we're going to make sure that we set the parent first thing that we do. And then we're also going to set a position. Now, the X needs to change, but it's going to be very similar. So local X equals the left right border pixels, and then 3 times the margin between icon pixels and the icon width. So that's super easy. And then Y, is Y still correct? Yep, we want it to be on the same height. Set visible, set size, great. All of that is fantastic. And now we can go ahead and say, if something something, not sure what, then we're going to go ahead and self.innerStrength effect display set effect something, and self.innerStrength blah 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 set visible to true. Otherwise, we know we want to hide that. Set visible to false. Okay, what are we checking here? Let's go up to where we're doing this. We can see, the inner strength effect. That's what it is. So if inner strength effect is not nil, then we can go ahead and set it. And also update the visibility. Cool, okay. So if we reload, we can be disappointed. Something didn't quite work there, and that's okay. This is how we learn. So if inner strength is, oh, I didn't do a self, that will definitely always be false, because that will always be nil because we're not doing it anywhere else. Okay. Oh, excellent. We can see icon. Oh, that is super great. I am realizing that I didn't include the timer height in the window, I think. Let's go back and take a look. So we have the icon height, but what we don't have is the local timer height equals, let's call it 5 pixels again, I'm not sure. Plus icon height plus timer height. Now that's especially long, so let's go ahead and break that up into a couple lines. So name height plus name icon margin plus inner strength here and icon height. Yeah, that'll work. So we'll go ahead and put on more, unload, reload. Now, when you first load it up, nothing's there, but effects lists change all the time. And so we could read the effects list on startup. That would be a nice thing to do. So it's always correct. But even if we don't, if you have any of these effects on, we're going to see that eventually. Okay, and one thing I would really like to see, oh, that's cool, is I would like to see this fall off as they are expiring. So we can see 17 seconds, 25 seconds, 32 seconds. Now, I'm pretty reasonable this is going to work because the code the Minstrel buff section we lifted it from, that works. But it's always nice to see it working in action. And when it comes to an effect, I don't know how easy it is to spoof out, but this is super easy to test. Okay, we saw one disappear. We saw the inner strength disappear. That was fantastic. Okay, now it's interesting. I was expecting it to disappear faster, but it disappeared at the same time as it did from my player character screen behind that API. You know, we're not using the API right now. Let me hide that. So what I was seeing is, despite the timer hitting what I would have expected was 0, it took an extra second or two to clear, but it was in sync with this icon over here. And that's the important thing, is that it's in sync with that. All right, we can see inner strength is coming up, 5 seconds. It's really time to refresh it, otherwise we're going to lose that tactical and physical mitigation, and it's gone. Now, there's an extra 15 seconds on the Soliloquy of Spirit, so its timeout is coming very soon as well. So the timer says 4 seconds, 3, 2, 1, but we can see it hits 0, and then a second or two later it goes. So we may need to be adjusting our visual timer based on that. I'm not sure. I'm going to default to the 45 seconds that Inner Spirit claims. Okay. Now, an important thing that reminds me of is when you look at the inner strength effect, it just says Soliloquy of Spirit increases mitigations by 1%. But it doesn't say that this only lasts for 30 seconds, where Soliloquy of Spirit lasts for 45 seconds. So that's the thing you just need to do when you're developing a plugin. You need to pay attention to where the UI just doesn't tell you things, or where, if it was in conflict, the actual effect is the thing that matters. Okay, so we have some really cool stuff. I'm very excited just to see this already. If I could hook this up just for a fellowship, that will be very cool. But what we don't have are little timer bars underneath showing us how much time is left on each of these effects. And that's important because 45 seconds goes by really fast under hectic conditions. I just got distracted looking. Inner Strength has a pointy upper left-hand corner, but Soliloquy of Spirit does not. Huh. All right. So we already have in the Minstrel Buff plugin a timer control, and that timer control knows how to take a duration and a start time and redraw itself according to how much time is left to give you a proportional sense. Now, these anthems currently last for 1 minute, and so the Soliloquy's 45 seconds is going to tick a little bit faster.
and the inner strength's 30 seconds will take twice as fast. But that's okay. This is just meant to be a proportional view so that when the bar gets low, we could even color it a different color to be like, oh no, only 5 seconds left. But regardless, when the bar gets low, you as a player can look and say, oh, time to refresh. And again, I don't know that I necessarily need 3 Soliloquy of Spirits on every person in my fellowship or my raid, but I definitely would like to see that inner strength 3% mitigation on everyone. And that just means touching up each one of them once every half a minute. And maybe that's not very sustainable. The cooldown on Soliloquy of Spirit itself is 1.5 seconds, so 1001, 1002, about 3 seconds. So if I wanted to touch everyone in the fellowship with that, that's already about 18 seconds of time. And now you've only got 12 seconds to do anything else. So that might be excessive, but definitely on tanks or people who definitely need the extra assistance. So just having this information in the heads-up display will inform how I want to use it. Okay, so we have a timer. Can we go ahead and incorporate it without too much trouble? I don't know, but I bet Buff Window has some ideas if I search for timer control. So, timer control, Anthem time displays equals something. Well, that sounds amazing. Are we still in the constructor? We are still in the start function. That sounds amazing. I'm going to go ahead and steal this code, borrow, be inspired by. I'm going to be inspired by this code, and in the constructor, right after we create the effect spaces, we're going to go ahead and add some comments. Oh my goodness. Create effect displays for each of the 3 Soliloquy of Spirits. And then create effect display for the inner strength. Cool. Now, we still don't have the rank of the inner strength. I almost want to stop and do that first because it's just such a cool feature in my mind's eye. But we'll go ahead and say create Soliloquy of Spirit timers. Okay, so we know there's 3 of them. In a slightly more practiced world, I might pull out the count here into its own variable. I guess. Okay, so max solil. Oh my goodness. Did I really misspell soliloquy here? Probably. All right. So max soliloquy of spirit equals 3. All right. So we'll just find the places that we use 3 in that way. Max soliloquy of spirits and max soliloquy of spirits. All right. So it'll be slightly easier. Oh, and for the X. It'll be slightly easier for us to adjust this should you ever be able to stack up to 4 or only be able to stack to 2. So from 1 to that new max value, which is 3, and we're incrementing by 1, which is the default, so I'm not going to write it. Do something. So again, I'm just going to call the variable x. Pause x is certainly fine. In my head, x and y are just screen coordinates or window coordinates, relative coordinates, and it just works. So we have a similar problem where the x should be the same as before. In fact, why am I even doing a different branch? Let's go ahead and do it in here. Maybe. I reserve the right to change my mind. Okay. We're going to call it Soliloquy of Spirit effect timer instead of effect, well, a Soliloquy of Spirit timer. I think that makes sense. Timer, and it's a minstrel buff window, timer control. Great. Setting the parent to self, and setting the position to X, and, well, our Y is actually going to be a little bit different because we need it to be Y plus the icon height plus something. And so we have a height of the timer, but we also need a above timer margin. We're going to call that 2 pixels and see what that's like. So we can go ahead and add in the icon height and the above timer margin, and that's where we're going to start drawing this bar. Set visible to false, great. And set timer size. Now, again, they're using a theme here. So we're going to set it to, we're just going to set it to the width of the icon. And, oh my goodness, what are we going to do for the height? I kind of like what it looks like right now. And so if I were to go to the minstrel effects, oh, that's not the right place at all. If I were to go to the themes, let's see, what is this one called? Theme window. Timer height of 3. Let's give that a try. We'll call it 3 for right now. And the real question is, where do these get used? All right, get anthem time display. Nice. Show anthem. Okay, so we can use this, we can just reference this in our current function. So we're going to go ahead and self.soliloquy_spirit_timer, do something with that. So we're going to set the duration. Great. This already has what I need. So set duration, and we already have, you know what? Local effect equals, I'm just going to make my life a little bit easier by giving a name to that. Since I'm going to reference it in multiple places. Okay. Yeah. And then we're going to go ahead and set visible and set duration, effect get duration. Awesome. What else? What else do we do? Time window set start time. Okay, we can do that. I really feel like that should just take an effect and rip out the things it needs from that. That's a change that I might make, is the timer should just, here's your effect, and then it just takes what it needs. Okay, and then we want to set the visibility of that. That sounds great. So self, Soliloquy Spirit timer, I set visible true. And then for each of them that aren't, we'll go ahead and set Soliloquy Spirit timer, I set visible to false. Okay, neat. Let's give that a try. So we go ahead and reload, and we see error messages. Of course we do. That was maybe asking a little bit too much. So let's come into here and figure out what's going on. We can see in the row, line 70, something has gone wrong. Oh, of course, I forgot to actually initialize this lovely table that we really need to initialize that. Cool. So, oh hey, it just loaded. One bug is not too bad. It's working. Oh my goodness. I always want to just stop here and add in the timer for inner string. But so this is exactly what we were hoping to see. A little ticking bar counting down, possibly too little. It's a little short. Might bump that up to 4 or 5 pixels. But the idea being that when it gets down to a certain level, we could even modify it to show red or warning. But regardless, you can see, oh, that first one is about to expire. And in fact, there it goes. Okay, so the oldest one should get replaced when you rebuff with these. So you can just drop off the ones that are about to expire off the end by bringing in a new one. Oh no, I am seeing some errors in the codes. Let's pause here to 124. Okay, so soliloquy effect, set effect, attempt to index field a nil value. Well, that's fascinating. Why? Why is it doing that? Let me start it back up and see when it first started erroring. So, open that. Okay. Let's go ahead and add a turbine.shell.writeLine debug statement to figure out what is this count. Because I'm worried that we're hitting like 4 of them in some sort of glitchiness. So, count. And we'll go ahead and reload the plugin. And let's go ahead and fire that back up. So we have a count of 3. Count of 3. And you can see this is getting called a bunch of times. Okay, there was a count of 4 there really briefly. That is excellent. Okay, so local count equals that if count is greater than max, then count equals max. Awesome. So we should not ever see 4 of them, but if a new one is added and the old one hasn't been removed yet, then sure, we could totally see that. Let's go ahead and reload now that we have that change. Okay, we're still seeing 130. Oh, because we didn't actually start using it. Okay, so we're going to use that. And let's go ahead and cut out all but the debug statements that we care about there. So let's go ahead and, okay, we saw a count equals 4. We see another count equals 4. We're seeing another count equals 4. That's fascinating. That suggests that the new one's added and then the old one is removed. But because this function is getting called like 4 different times each time I call this, it's okay because the effect immediately being overwritten by the valid value, which is why I was saying before, I think paying attention specifically to added and removed instead of just like redo everything every time something changes will be the better long-term strategy. Because unlike Minstrel buffs, which is keeping track of maybe 6 icons, you could see where you have 4 of these icons per player times 6 players. Okay, that's 24. That's a lot of recalculation of things. So we want to be kinder to our processor. That being said, this is fantastic. Sorry, I'm just watching them spill on off there. Add another one. Cool. Well, we're really close to being having a full row here. I think we could go ahead and add a timer. So let's go ahead and just duplicate that same create timer. But okay, let's go ahead and oh, I have a timer height here. Why wasn't I using it? I don't know, but I should. Great. Let's go ahead and create a inner strength timer. So we're going to go ahead and just rename that inner strength timer. And we don't need to have a table here. We're just going to have a single thing. So that's timer control, set parent self. We do need to recalculate. X is fine. Y is also fine. Why not? Okay. Set visible false, set the timer size. Great. And then in our callback function, we need to pay attention in here. So we need to do the three things which are set the duration, set the start time, and set visible. Or set visible to false. And again, as I've mentioned on previous ones, because this is just setting visible to the state of this Boolean check, you could actually just set this to local show inner strength equals self.inner strength is not nil. And then you could just set visible that value, right? It's not important to have this here for true, this here for false. They're just mimicking that other value. But now that I'm looking at them, I'm using that true and false multiple times. Okay, so local show inner strength equals that. So once we have that check, we can go ahead and replace. So if show inner strength, then, and we can go ahead and extract out this. We're going to just set visible to show inner strength. And set visible to show inner strength. And then we don't even need this else branch because it's already redundant. And we can do a very similar thing. Okay, so for those, I'm going to leave them because of the way we're iterating through each one, but I'm less than happy about it. It's okay. So, what do we have? We have a crash. Of course we do. On line 153, we say attempt to index global. Yeah, I imagine so. So, local effect equals self.inner strength effect, and then we can just go ahead and reference it in each of these places, and that'll be a nicer way to do it. Okay, unload, reload, and give that a shot. Awesome. We have a timer. We can even see that the timer is A, ticking down, and B, being restarted each time I cast Soliloquy of Spirit. And also we can see it is ticking down faster because it only has a 30-second timer instead of a 45-second timer. So if I'm looking at that, and if this is, say, my tank, my trusty bear going into combat, I can see that 3% mitigations on tactical and physical is almost up. I want to go ahead and refresh that, even if I don't care about the heals, but of course I do on the tank. So we'll just go ahead and pop that up as well. Neat. I do see that my debug output continues to come on through. We're going to go ahead and mix that. Okay. Well, that's really cool. The one thing we don't have yet is the dots above. And for that, we can actually just create 3 controls that each take up about a third of that space with some space in between. So let's take a look at that. we're creating an effects display for inner strength. We could actually create another control that just knows how to display 0, 1, 2, or 3. It's kind of tempting, actually. It would certainly solve some math problems. Oh, thanks, Little Redhead. Yes, we are coming up on the hour. I may be pausing here. I want to display that tier, but I may have to save that for next week. So we made a lot of progress here. We have a row that can show how many Soliloquy of Spirits we have, and if we have inner strength up. Not showing the rank yet, but that's coming. And we can see that the timers are working, and that's just great. I'm really excited to go ahead and instantiate this for each member of the party, and when they fall off, go ahead and hide it and all that extra stuff. But for now, this is some really cool progress. We went from having a blue box to a blue box with some cool stuff on top of it. So, do feel free to chime into chat if you have any thoughts or questions on what we've seen so far, or suggestions on where we should go from here. And in the meantime, I'm going to take a drink of water. I'm going to take a minute to clean up this blue, because I actually do want to use this thing in general. Or I want to try it out this week. And so I'm going to do a couple nice little housekeeping items. So for a UI control, there is a function called is mouse visible, and we want to set that to false for anything that we don't want to click on. So is mouse visible false, and we want to go ahead and quite possibly use that on some of the children items as well. But let's check this out. Where it says is a lovely and functional blue box. Not the best one out there, but still quite good. Yes, it was just taking up a lot of space on my screen. Okay, so we want to go ahead and use is mouse visible on each of the children as well. So in Soliloquy tracker row, we're going to go ahead and say self set size, self is mouse visible false. Yes. And is that enough? Let's commit back in. Can I drag this around? I still can't click underneath it. So we'll go ahead and player name label. Well, that's not doing it. What else am I missing? That was a disappearing blue box. Better, says Weirwall. Yes, as most blue boxes should do. All right, I'm going to have to play around with making sure everything is invisible to mice. Oh, I'm calling is mouse visible. I should be calling set mouse visible. Of course, maybe. Yeah, set mouse visible. That is definitely part of the problem. One of the downsides of this particular language is it's fine with you calling the wrong function there and passing a parameter it's not expecting. Why not? Okay, so we do need it on the name. So player name label, set mouse visible false. Excellent. And then let's go ahead and double check that so we can click where that name is and still drag it around. But my concern, yep, we're going to want it on these other elements as well. So self.soliloquy effects display is I. Set mouse visible false. Yes. And then the timer. Self.soliloquy spirit of timer. I. Set mouse visible false. And just keep on going along. And we can do that here too. Self.inner strength effects display. Set mouse visible false. And self.inner strength timer. Set mouse visible false. Great. So as it is, we can now click here. My goodness. I can't do it on the effect itself. Have I done something wrong? Is it possible here? Well, they don't do it here. What do we have? Effects display, set mouse visible false. That may not be a thing that is supported, but that's okay. And the final thing is I'm just going to reposition this for my purposes. Eventually we want to have it be draggable, but as we've seen on previous streams, that's a whole thing. So the window, oops. What did I just do? Split into lines. Well, did I want to do that? Yeah, sure. So we're going to go ahead and slide it over a little bit. Let's call that maybe 600. I'll knock it down to 550. And it's going to live closer to my chat window, probably. So let's go ahead and start moving that sucker down. 1,000's way too much because my screen's only about 1,000 high. There we go. Okay, so we're going to bump that just slightly left and up a bit because I do like stretching my chat window into that space when I can. Okay, that is cool. Okay, so I'm going to run with that this week and play around with it and see, does that spark joy? But so far, it's sparking a bunch of joy. Oh, that's so cool. Probably not the most efficient thing because every tick we're recalculating, should the bar get smaller, should the bar get smaller? But it's fine. It's fine. Ideally, we would just have a central function that says it's been a second that calls all the things that care, but I thought about that and it seemed like effort, so I haven't gotten to that point yet. Okay, well, we have reached the end of what time we have for today. So I think that's everything we're going to cover today. We have made tremendous progress from a blue box that did nothing to a bar that shows the Soliloquy of Spirit and Inner Strength buffs on my character at least, and that's really cool. So hopefully next week we can go ahead and start adding in party members so we can support members both existing when you log in, but also adding and subtracting them and adjusting the display. That's all we're going to cover today. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you next week where we continue this work. And until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.